Ever heard of a guy named Eugene V. Debs?
Mm.
5-time presidential candidate,
Oh, wow.
tireless labor organizer,
Yeah.
and a real thorn in the side of the establishment for decades.
She sounds like it.
You asked us for a deep dive into his life.
Okay.
And let me tell you,
Yeah?
it's a wild ride.
I bet.
So we're going to be using
Okay.
a fantastic NPR episode called Throughline, Eugene V. Debs,
Okay.
as our roadmap for this journey.
Okay, cool.
Now,
Yeah.
you might be thinking, socialism, that's not really my thing.
Right.
But trust me,
Okay.
whether you agree with his politics or not,
Yeah.
Debs' story offers a glimpse into a side of American history
Okay.
that's often overlooked.
Interesting.
A time when the fight for workers' rights was front and center.
Yeah. And it's a story
Yeah.
that feels incredibly relevant today
But
with the ongoing conversations about income inequality,
Yeah,
worker exploitation, and the role of unions.
for sure. So let's rewind the clock back to the late 1800s.
Okay.
Debs grew up in Terre Haute, Indiana,
Interesting.
a real melting pot of a town
Ah.
with a frontier spirit.
Yeah.
Education was highly valued.
Okay.
And Debs' parents,
Yeah.
especially his father,
Right.
instilled in him a love of literature
Uh-huh.
and a strong sense of social justice.
Interesting.
And one book in particular
Okay.
made a huge impact on young Debs.
Oh, which one?
Victor Hugo's Les Miserables.
Oh, wow.
It's a sweeping epic
Okay.
about poverty, injustice,
Yeah.
and the plight of the working class.
Wow.
Talk about a crash course in empathy, I can only imagine.
Yeah.
But it wasn't just books that shaped Debs' worldview.
Right. Of course.
He saw the struggles of working people firsthand.
Yeah. I mean,
Interesting.
his father worked a physically demanding job
Yeah.
that took a toll on his health.
That's right.
And Debs himself had to drop out of high school at 14
Wow.
to help support his family. He ended up working on the railroads,
Right?
a dangerous and grueling job
Oh, yeah.
that exposed him to the harsh realities of industrial life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's hard to imagine having to make that choice
Yeah.
at such a young age.
Right.
So how did these early experiences influence his path?
Well, they laid the groundwork
Okay.
for his lifelong commitment
Yeah.
to improving the lives of working people.
Yeah.
But there was one particular incident
Okay.
that really solidified his resolve.
Oh, I think I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
This is where things take a dark turn.
Yeah. While working on the railroads,
Right.
Debs witnessed a horrific accident.
It was awful.
A friend of his was crushed to death by a locomotive,
Oh, it's terrible.
and workplace safety was practically non-existent back then.
I can imagine.
And this tragedy
Yeah.
made a deep impact on Debs.
It must have been incredibly traumatic.
It was, and it fueled his determination
Mm-hmm.
to make a difference. Initially, he thought he could work within the system to
Right.
bring about change.
Okay.
He dabbled in politics,
Yeah.
serving as a city clerk and even a state representative.
But that didn't quite go as planned, did it?
No, he quickly became disillusioned with the political process.
Yeah.
He felt that corporate influence
Yeah.
was stifling any real progress for workers.
Yeah, he felt like he was hitting a wall everywhere he turned.
Exactly.
So what did he do?
Give up.
Not Debs.
Okay.
He decided to shift gears
All right.
and focus on what he saw as a more direct way
Okay.
to advocate for workers' labor organizing.
Interesting.
He had a natural charisma,
Uh-huh.
a fiery passion,
Yeah.
and a gift for connecting with people
Yeah,
at
but
a personal level.
also a gifted writer and speaker.
Yes?
I read that he could write and deliver a compelling speech
Oh, wow.
in practically no time.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
He had this incredible ability
Yeah.
to translate complex ideas into relatable terms.
To make people feel seen and heard,
Yeah.
he poured his energy into writing articles,
Mhm.
giving speeches, and building unions.
And this led him to form the American Railway Union, right?
Exactly.
Oh.
It was a bold move,
Yeah.
uniting workers across different job roles within the railroad industry.
Wow.
The ARU became a powerful force,
Ah,
advocating for better wages,
yeah.
safer working conditions,
Okay.
and greater worker autonomy.
So we've got Debs, this charismatic leader
Yeah.
at the helm of a growing labor movement.
Okay.
Then comes the Pullman strike of 1894.
All right.
Now, this wasn't just any strike.
Oh, no.
It was a massive showdown that shook the nation.
Wow.
Can you set the scene for us?
Imagine this.
Okay.
It's the midst of a severe economic depression,
Oh, wow.
one of the worst in American history.
Okay.
The Pullman Palace Car Company
Mm-hmm.
famous for its luxurious train cars.
I've seen pictures.
Think chandeliers, plush upholstery, the works, was
Wow.
feeling the squeeze. But instead of sharing the burden,
Right.
they decided to make their workers bear the brunt of it.
Oh, I've heard about Pullman, Illinois.
Yeah,
It was a company town, right?
it was
Like
that
something out of a dystopian novel.
workers were forced to live
Yeah?
in company-owned housing,
Wow.
shop at company stores,
Okay.
and even attend a company church.
That's crazy.
Their lives were completely controlled
Yeah.
by the Pullman Company.
Wow.
And to add insult to injury,
Jeez.
the company slashed wages
Okay.
without reducing rents
Oh.
or the cost of goods in their stores.
So basically,
Yeah.
the workers were trapped.
Uh-huh.
They were being squeezed from all sides.
Oh, exactly.
And they finally reached their breaking point.
They did.
They went on strike,
Yeah.
demanding fair wages and better treatment.
Right.
Debs and the American Railway Union stood with them,
Okay.
calling for a nationwide boycott of Pullman cars.
That's a big deal.
This was a huge gamble.
It was.
What were the stakes?
Well, the stakes were incredibly high.
Okay.
The Pullman strike involved an estimated 250,000 workers
Wow.
and brought the American economy to its knees.
Oh my gosh.
Railroads ground to a halt.
Yeah.
Goods couldn't be transported,
Yeah.
and tensions were at a boiling point.
So how did the government respond to this crisis?
Well, President Grover Cleveland,
Okay.
who, ironically, Debs had campaigned for in the past,
Oh.
sided with the Pullman Company.
Okay.
He sent federal troops to break up the strike,
Oh, wow.
which led to violence and the deaths of several workers.
It must have been a devastating defeat.
It was a crushing blow.
Yeah.
The strike was ultimately unsuccessful.
Okay.
The American Railway Union was broken up,
Right.
and Debs himself was arrested
Wow.
and sentenced to 6 months in prison.
Jail time.
Yes,
Wow.
for defying a court order to end the strike.
That must have been a turning point for Debs.
It was a pivotal moment,
There.
sitting in prison,
Yeah.
surrounded by fellow workers and activists.
Yeah.
Debs had a lot of time to reflect.
Right.
He began to question everything
Okay.
he had once believed
Yeah.
about capitalism and the American system.
So this is where his journey towards socialism truly begins.
Yes, the seeds were definitely planted during his time behind bars.
Wow.
He came to the realization
Okay.
that both the Democrats and the Republicans,
Yeah.
despite their differences,
I see.
ultimately served the interests of the wealthy and powerful,
Yeah.
not the working
It
class.
sounds like he felt the
Yeah.
whole system needed a radical overhaul,
Exactly.
not just some minor tweaks.
And as we'll explore in the next part of our deep dive,
Okay.
Debs emerged from prison a changed man,
Right.
ready to embrace a new
Hmm.
path.
So Debs comes out of prison,
Yeah,
disillusioned with the establishment.
yeah.
What happens next?
Well,
Does he just dive headfirst into socialism?
it wasn't quite that sudden.
Okay.
His transformation was more of a gradual evolution.
Okay.
Remember, this is a man who loved literature,
Right.
who devoured ideas.
Yeah.
So he starts reading socialist works,
Okay.
connecting with thinkers and activists.
So he's piecing together a new ideology,
Right.
a new way of seeing the world.
Exactly. And it's important to remember the historical context here.
Okay.
We're talking about the turn of the 20th century,
Right.
the Gilded Age with its massive wealth disparity
Yeah.
is in full swing.
Okay.
Labor movements are gaining momentum.
Yeah.
Socialist ideas are bubbling up all over the country.
So Debs wasn't alone in his discontent.
Not at all.
He was tapping into a larger current of unrest.
Absolutely. And he had this
Yeah.
unique ability to bring people together.
Right.
He could bridge the gap
Right.
between intellectuals and blue-collar workers,
Uh-huh.
farmers and factory workers,
Oh, wait.
immigrants and native-born Americans.
Wow. So all walks of life.
Yes, he spoke to their shared struggles,
Okay.
their longing for a more just and equitable society.
But hold on a minute. Wasn't there a lot of infighting within the Socialist Party at the time? Different factions,
yeah.
different visions for the future.
There were definitely internal debates and disagreements.
Okay.
It wasn't a monolithic movement,
Right.
but Debs,
Yeah.
with his charisma and his ability to connect
Yeah.
on an emotional level,
Yeah.
managed to hold this diverse coalition together.
So it seems like
Yeah.
he had a real knack for translating
He did.
these complex socialist ideas
Yeah.
into something that resonated with everyday Americans.
He wasn't just spouting theoretical jargon.
Right.
He was talking about real-world issues,
Okay.
things people were experiencing in their own lives,
Okay.
poverty exploitation,
Right.
the lack of basic worker protections.
Okay.
He was offering a vision of a society where everyone had a fair shot,
Right.
a chance to live a decent life.
And this vision led him
Yes.
to run for president, not once,
Yeah.
but 5 times.
5 campaigns.
Wait.
Between 1900 and 1920.
Okay. Yeah.
Now, Debs knew he wasn't going to win.
Right.
The Socialist Party was a minority party.
Right.
But his goal wasn't simply to win elections.
Okay.
It was to use the platform to spread his message.
Right.
To raise awareness about socialist ideas.
Okay.
And to give a voice to the voiceless.
So he was playing the long game.
Exactly.
Trying to shift the national conversation.
He saw his campaigns as opportunities
Okay.
to educate, to agitate,
Okay.
to plant seeds for a future
Yeah.
where a more just and equitable society
Right.
might be possible.
And it's important to remember
Yeah.
that the Socialist Party
Mm-hmm.
wasn't just about winning elections.
Right.
They were actively pushing
Yes, they were.
for real policy changes,
Yeah.
such as,
Things we now take for granted,
okay.
like the 40-hour work week,
Oh, wow.
Social Security,
Okay.
old age pensions,
Right.
unemployment insurance,
Uh-huh.
and workplace safety regulations. These were considered radical ideas at the time,
Right.
but they were at the heart of the Socialist Party platform.
It's amazing to think
Is
that these things which are now woven into the fabric of American society
right.
were once seen as fringe ideas.
It shows the power of movements like this
Yeah.
to shift the Overton window,
Okay.
to change what's considered politically possible.
And Debs, with his ability to
Yeah.
connect with Middle America,
Yeah.
played a key role in making socialist ideas more palatable
He did.
to a wider audience.
He wasn't just some stuffy academic spouting off theory.
Right.
He was out there on the ground,
Yeah.
connecting with farmers, factory workers,
Yeah.
immigrants, people who were struggling.
And he had a flair for showmanship, too.
Oh, yes.
Didn't he have a famous campaign train?
The Red Special.
Okay.
It was more than just a train.
Yeah.
It was a traveling spectacle.
Oh.
Imagine a 15-piece band. Right. Huge crowds gathering at every stop. And Debs giving these fiery speeches
Okay.
from the back of the train.
It sounds like a mix of a political rally
It was.
and a rock concert.
And it captured people's attention.
Okay.
The Socialist Party was gaining momentum,
Yeah.
winning local elections,
Yeah.
forcing mainstream politicians like Teddy Roosevelt
Wow.
to take notice.
It's like they were shaking things up,
Yeah.
forcing the establishment to confront these issues.
Yeah, they were making some waves.
But then World War I broke out,
Yeah,
and the whole world changed.
it did.
Yeah.
And Debs found himself
Okay.
at odds with the prevailing tide
Okay.
of nationalism and war fever.
This is where things get really complicated, right?
It does.
Because America initially wanted to stay neutral in the war.
Yes, but then
Right.
the Wilson administration
Okay.
launched a massive propaganda campaign
Right.
to shift public opinion.
Yeah.
They portrayed the Germans as villains
Right.
and the Allies as noble heroes,
Oh.
drumming up support for the war effort.
It's a tactic as old as time itself.
It is.
Demonize the enemy
Yep.
to rally the troops.
Exactly. And it worked.
Okay.
The country became swept up
Yeah.
in war fever.
Right.
And anyone who dared to speak out against the war
Right.
was labeled unpatriotic,
Yeah.
even traitorous.
Wow. So Debs was facing
Yeah.
some serious pressure to stay silent,
Yeah.
to conform.
Yeah.
What did he do?
He stuck to his principles.
Okay.
He and the Socialist Party
Mm-hmm.
remained staunchly opposed to the war,
Okay.
arguing that it was a rich man's war and a poor man's fight.
Right.
They saw it as a conflict
Yeah.
driven by capitalist interests,
Okay.
a senseless waste of human life,
Yeah.
and they refused to be silenced.
That took guts.
It did.
Speaking out against a war
Yeah.
that your country is engaged in
Uh-huh.
is a dangerous thing to do.
It was. And to make matters worse,
Oh, no.
the government passed the Espionage Act of 1917. This law wasn't simply about preventing espionage.
Right.
It was used to stifle dissent, to silence any criticism
Wow.
of the war or the government.
So Debs was walking a tightrope,
Yes, he was.
knowing that he could be arrested
Uh-huh.
for speaking his mind.
Yeah.
What did he do?
Well, in June of 1918,
Okay.
he delivered one of the most powerful
Right.
and defiant anti-war speeches in American history.
Wow.
It became known as the Canton, Ohio speech.
The one where he was surrounded by federal agents.
That's the one.
Just waiting for him to slip up.
Yeah.
Talk about pressure.
Yeah.
So what did Debs say in this now infamous speech?
It was a masterpiece of rhetoric.
Okay.
Debs spoke passionately about the true meaning of democracy,
Right.
about the right of the people to have a say in matters of war and peace.
Wow.
He railed against war profiteering, the way the wealthy elite were lining their pockets while sending working-class boys to die in the trenches.
Wow. So he wasn't holding back.
No, he wasn't.
He was directly challenging the narrative that was being pushed by the government.
He was, and he did it
Yeah?
with such eloquence and conviction.
It's amazing.
He knew he was taking a huge risk.
Yeah.
But he felt he had a moral obligation to speak truth to power, to stand up for what he believed in.
So what happened?
Wow.
Did the crowd embrace his message?
The crowd was moved. Some were cheering him on. Others were visibly shaken by his words.
Right.
But the federal agents were unmoved.
Oh, wow.
2 weeks later,
Yeah.
they arrested Debs,
Wow.
charging him with violating the Espionage Act.
It seems like they were just waiting
It does.
for an excuse to silence him.
It seems that way, but even at his trial, Debs remained defiant.
Okay.
He refused to back down from his beliefs.
Wow.
His statement to the judge is incredibly powerful.
What did he say?
He basically said, "I have no country to fight for. My country is the earth, and I am a citizen of the world."
So he was using his trial as a platform to challenge the very notion of blind patriotism.
He was, and the judge sentenced him to 10 years in federal prison.
That's a long time.
It was a harsh sentence,
Yeah.
but it didn't silence Debs.
Okay.
He became a symbol of resistance,
Yeah.
a martyr for the cause of free speech and workers' rights.
And in a truly remarkable turn of events,
Yeah.
the Socialist Party actually ran him for president again in 1920
They did.
while he was still incarcerated.
It was a bold move,
It was.
a way to protest his imprisonment,
Right.
and to highlight the absurdity of the Espionage Act.
Yeah.
And get this, he received almost 1 million votes.
1 million votes for a man in prison. That's incredible.
It is.
It speaks volumes
It does.
about the level of support he still had,
Right.
even after being convicted.
It shows that his message still resonated
Yeah.
with the significant portion of the American public.
So what happened next?
Huh.
Did Debs serve out his full sentence?
He ended up serving 2 years and 8 months
Okay.
before being released by President Harding in 1921.
Right.
His health had deteriorated during his time in prison,
I can imagine.
but his spirit remained unbroken.
I imagine coming out of prison after an experience like that must have been incredibly difficult.
It was.
Did he continue his activism?
He did. He continued to speak out
Okay.
for social justice,
Right.
for workers' rights,
Right.
for a more equitable society.
Yeah.
He remained a powerful voice for the voiceless
Yeah.
until his death in 1926.
So what's Debs's lasting legacy? What can we learn from his life and struggles?
Debs' story is complex and multifaceted.
Yeah.
He was a flawed individual,
Right.
like all of us.
Of course.
But there's no denying the impact he had on
Right.
American history.
Yeah.
He helped popularize socialist ideas. He played a pivotal role
Yeah.
in the fight for workers' rights.
Right.
And he challenged the status quo,
Absolutely.
even when it was dangerous to do so.
He reminds us that dissent is crucial
It is.
for a healthy democracy.
That speaking truth to power,
Yeah.
even when it's unpopular,
Right.
is essential.
His story also raises important questions
It does.
about the balance between national security and individual liberties,
Right.
especially during times of war.
It's a debate that continues to this day.
So for our listeners out there who are curious about Eugene V. Debs,
Yeah?
hopefully this deep dive has shed some light
I hope so.
on his fascinating and complex life.
He was a very interesting person.
He was a man who fought tirelessly
He did.
for a more just and equitable world,
Yeah.
a world where the voices of the working class were heard
Uh-huh.
and their rights were respected.
Absolutely.
And in today's world,
Yeah.
where we're still grappling with many of the same issues, income inequality,
Right.
worker exploitation,
Yeah.
the erosion of democratic values.
It's tough.
Debs' story feels as relevant as ever.
It really does.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into the life and legacy of Eugene V. Debs,
Okay.
be sure to subscribe to the deep dive
Yeah.
for more insightful conversations and explorations of history, ideas, and current events.
Sounds good.
We'll be back soon with another thought-provoking episode.